live stream got bailed out on me last night. My live stream got bailed out on me.
Like I told Carlo,
But luckily I worked on all
Carlo.
departments. Luckily I worked on all departments. So you're basically what I'm trying to say.
I'm trying. So.
And I usually just go outside and like watch the live.
Yeah.
Just in case there's like a.
I know. So if you mute the video.
Oh, it's blaring red.
So loud. Okay. So I'm going to do this. That's because it was up.
Full blast.
No. Actually, it wasn't. It was on instrument.
Okay, cool. So
That's better.
Oopsie.
So I'm still sending you a lot. So I'm going to bring you way down. Is that better? How's that? Still red? Okay, I'm going to bring it down quite a bit more. Is that better? Or is it still too much? That's better. Still a little hot.
Still running a little hot.
Still a little bit. And it's also mono right now, but we can fix that by doing this.
So
Properties. Okay. Mono. That's the one. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Amazing. I love to see it. Okay. Yeah. Ha. Okay. There we go. We're ready.
Thank you very much.
No problem.
Hello. 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 Testing, testing. Okay. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm the MC for this event, and as we are setting up and we're going to start shortly, I would have to do something that I really don't like doing, which is to possibly inconvenience a few people who have already chosen their comfort zone to sit. So if you don't mind, and we take full responsibility for not taking care of this business early on, we would like to invite the very distinguished people on that other column. If you could just find a way to the middle or any of these pews there. I mean, just the last wing. For purposes of projection, connection, community, photograph, video, and everything else you can imagine. I think it just helps. Thank you so, so much. And pardon my having to make you make that move. All right. So we'll be back shortly. afternoon, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. This is more like priming you for the start of the event. I'd like to apologize for starting a little bit behind schedule. We'll try and see how we can recover the time within the program itself. Just while we wait for His Excellency and his entourage to come in, I wanted to quickly give you a heads up of what the program for the evening looks like. My name is Nduka Otiono. I'm a writer and the director of the Institute of African Studies at Carleton. We're excited to be co-hosting this event with the Tanzanian High Commission in Canada. So just before we get down to business, I wanted to alert you about where the washrooms are. So the ladies is if you step out and turn to the right through the very small stairway there, you know, the women's washroom is right there on the left. And then the men's is, you know, just as you turn left on the hallway. So this is what the lineup for the evening is like. Already we're doing the meet and greet. We'll have the welcoming and then the briefing on the program, which is what I'm doing right now. And then we'll have national anthems of Canada and Tanzania. And then we'll have welcoming statements from the president of Carleton University, here represented by the Associate Vice President International. And then we'll also have opening statements by Professor Brenda O'Neill, Dean of the Faculty of Public Affairs at Carleton. And then we'll proceed to opening remarks by Cindy Demoshwezen, Associate Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs at the Republic of Tanzania and High Commission. And then we'll have the profile of Mwalimu Nyerere and welcoming of the keynote speaker, His Excellency, Dr. Mboki Ilisubiasia, High Commissioner of the United Republic of Tanzania. And he will be introducing the keynote address for the evening by His Excellency Jakaya Kikwete, a former president of the United Republic of Tanzania. And then we'll take a very short film because this is dedicated to celebrating one of Africa's greatest leaders, political philosopher. So we'll take a short film of about 5 minutes in a Nyerere short film. And then we'll have the session number 1, Nyerere's Legacy in Diplomacy. This will take us about 30 minutes. I do know that we have very distinguished diplomats here. We're going to try our very best to keep to time. And then we'll have High Commissioner of the Republic of South Africa to Canada. We'll also have Chikwera, Ambassador of Zimbabwe to Canada. And then we have the High Commissioner of Tanzania to Canada. So we have 3 High Commissioners who will be speaking on this panel. And then if we can, and if the audience is very excited about the conversations that will take place this evening, we'll be happy to welcome a Q&A session. But before then, we'll have guest speakers to answer the questions. And then that will be about the formal part of the event. But because we also want to document this evening, there'll be a photo session afterwards. So ladies and gentlemen, if you'll join me in giving a very rousing welcome to His Excellency, the former President of Tanzania. Welcome, Your Excellency. And because this is an African event in Canada, our ancestors will not be happy that we speak English all through this evening or this afternoon. So I'm going to invite the head of Chancery of the Tanzania High Commission in Canada, Mr. Charles Faini, to welcome us in the language that our ancestors here and taught us, and that's Swahili. Charles, please. Please give me a warm round.
Thank you very much, Ndoka. Mheshimiwa Jakaya Mrisho Kikwete, Rais mstaafu wa Jamhuri ya Muungano wa Tanzania, waheshimiwa mabalozi, waheshimiwa mabibi na mabwana, members wa Chuo Kikuu cha Carleton, Watanzania wenzangu mnaoishi hapa Canada, mabibi na mabwana, habari za mchana. As I was introduced, my name is Charles Faini. I'm the head of chancellery at the Tanzania High Commission. I joined the mission in November last year. I'll be working together with Professor Nduka Tuko as an alternative MC in Swahili language. Today, we remember the great man, Mwalimu Julius Nyerere. Alikuwa anaongoza kusambaza lugha ya Kiswahili hii, worked tirelessly to spread and to spread the language, Swahili language in Tanzania. During his time, before he became the president, as we may recall, Swahili was not very popular. It was ethnic groups. So before anything else, we will start by national anthems. Tutaanza na nyimbo za taifa. Thank you.
Canadian. Thank you. So we're going to move very quickly through the order of business for the afternoon. And I'll be welcoming the president of Carleton University. I'm here represented today by Professor Bettina Kuzmarov, Associate Vice President, International Carleton University. Dr. Bettina Kuzmarov is a current Associate Vice President, International. Bettina previously served as the chair of the Department of Law and Legal Studies, where she was a faculty member since 2006. Clerk of Carleton Senate and Associate Dean, Students and Enrollment in the Faculty of Public Affairs. She has held other very distinguished positions at Carleton. And we are very honored to have Bettina represent Carlton President today and to give you the welcome remarks. Please give her a round of applause as she comes over.
I think the box was put here just for me, so thank you very much. With that, there's no need for me to follow up on the introduction, just to say that it's my pleasure to be here today and to share some brief remarks on behalf of President Benoit Antoine Bacon, who expresses his sincerest regrets for being unable to attend this historic event. Before we begin officially, I would like to take a moment on behalf of the Carleton community to say that we acknowledge and respect the Algonquin people, traditional custodians of the land on which we are currently gathered. On behalf of Carleton, I'd like to start by welcoming the former President of the United Republic of Tanzania, His Excellence Jakaya Kikwete, to Canada, and to the beautiful Dominion Chalmers Center here in Ottawa. It's an honor to host you, and we recognize and appreciate your efforts to be here today. I'd also like to acknowledge the presence of all our esteemed speakers, Your Excellencies, and esteemed speakers who we will hear from momentarily, and everyone else who has gathered with us this afternoon. Particularly, I'd like to acknowledge with appreciation the presence of the Associate Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs, Cindy Timor-Season, and we're very grateful you could join us today. I'd also like to offer a quick thank you to the High Commission of the United Republic of Tanzania in Canada and the Institute of African Studies at Carleton for your ongoing collaboration and bringing us together. As you all know, 2022 marks the posthumous centenary of the birth of Mwalimu Julius Nyerere, the father of Tanzania and its first president. We are all here to celebrate the inspiring life and legacy of this historic and influential figure, who is very important not just to those in this room, but to many people in the Carleton community who have connections to Tanzania, the continent of Africa, and beyond. Carleton University is an interdisciplinary, research-intensive school with a strong international focus. Such focus is represented in the programs and departments that are available to students, which of course includes the Institute of African Studies. As one of the leading institutes of African studies in Canada, it attracts faculty members and experts who provide fresh insight into current and historical African topics through their research and undergraduate and graduate level courses. It also houses the Canada 150 Research Chair in Gender and African Politics. As the Associate Vice President International, I'd like to also take a moment to acknowledge the effort of the Institute to engage with the African Diplomatic Corps in Canada. Our ongoing partnerships foster a sense of interconnectedness and help to create incredible opportunities for our faculty, staff, and students, such as a special event such as this. Research and mobility opportunities, which are the backbone of our first ever international strategic plan, stands as a testament to Carleton's commitment to internationalization. I am confident that I speak on behalf of the entire Carleton community when I say I look forward to the increased collaboration between our two great countries. Once again, please let me express my gratitude to His Excellency Jakaya Kikwete for traveling to Canada to be with us today, and for the speakers for sharing your insights this afternoon. Thank you very much.
Thank you for those remarks. I will invite the Carleton Institute of African Studies is housed in two faculties, one of the few units that has that distinction. So it's housed under the Faculty of Arts and Social Sciences, FAS, and then also the Faculty of Public Affairs. Today, we are wearing the beautiful hat of other faculty, Public Affairs, and we have the Dean of the Faculty of Public Affairs, Dr. Brenda O'Neill. Dr. Brenda O'Neill joined Carleton, was appointed Dean of the Faculty of Public Affairs on October 1, 2020. She holds a position as professor in the Department of Political Science. Dr. O'Neill has held several distinguished academic leadership positions, most recently as Department Head Political Science at the University of Calgary. And she has traversed different institutions in Canada before coming to Carleton, where she is lending her expertise and her deep experience in running one of Carleton's most exciting units, faculties. It's my honor to invite Dr. O'Neill to give the remarks, not just on behalf of Faculty of Public Affairs, but also on behalf of the Faculty of Arts and Social Sciences, for which the other dean sends her regrets for being unavoidably absent. Welcome, Dr. O'Neill.
Thank you very much for that introduction, Aduka. And yes, I'm here representing the two faculties, but as the Dean of the Faculty of Public Affairs, it is my pleasure to welcome the former President of Tanzania, His Excellency Jakaya Kikwete, to Carleton. He's providing the keynote lecture today on the legacy of Mwalimu Julius. And here at the beautiful, what I always say, one of the nicest buildings that we have at Carleton, the Demeaning Chalmers Center. It's a beautiful venue. It's also my distinct pleasure to welcome the dignitaries that are here from the Diplomatic Corps and everyone else, in addition, from the community. I want to say a little bit about Carleton's Institute of African Studies. It was established in 2009 and is the only such standalone institute across the country. It's focused solely on African studies. What's important and interesting, and what was mentioned by Bettina, is that the Institute is truly interdisciplinary. It links faculty members from a number of different disciplines, including history, geography, law, to name but a few. And each of those faculty members has a focus on African studies, and they come together to examine the topic from a number of disciplinary lenses. And it joins with other units on campus to provide programs in a number of various degrees to students. And as mentioned already, the Institute is housed jointly in two faculties. And again, it's the Faculty of Arts and Social Sciences and the Faculty of Public Affairs that jointly oversee the Institute. And that is also, I think, unique in universities. As Ndoku's mentioned, I've been at a number of universities, and it's very rare to have units on campus be housed in two separate faculties. But it is, I think, what epitomizes Carleton, its true commitment to interdisciplinarity, to multidisciplinarity, to making sure that it works in concrete and very effective ways. And I think that the Institute of African Studies is one of our most successful institutes. Since its inception, the Institute has promoted the discipline of African Studies and also successfully promoted a greater understanding of the continent through a number of events and a number of research programs. As an example, it's been a leader in collaborating with the African Diplomatic Corps in Canada. And we look forward to more of those types of partnerships in the future. So we're fortunate not only to have that institute at Carleton, but also to have a number of international students from Africa. And it's unquestionably true that those students immensely add to the learning environment here at Carleton and within my own faculty, the Faculty of Public Affairs. Our mission in the Faculty of Public Affairs includes contributing to informed citizenship, as well as addressing regional and global challenges. And the scholars whose work focuses on Africa and within the Institute are integral to our achieving that mission. We're also fortunate to be so close to the diplomatic community, geographically, institutionally, and personally. The expertise in the IAS contributes to our students' experiences, and I hope there'll be many more collaborations to come, especially as our in-person gatherings increase in number over time. So I want to thank the High Commission of the Republic of Tanzania for co-hosting today's event with the Institute. I wish you tremendous success, and recognizing that no one is here to hear me, I will now say thank you.
Thank you for those remarks. Just before we invite the Associate Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs of Canada from Global Affairs Canada, Cindy Temushe-Zen, would like to acknowledge that we are in the unceded territory of the Anishinaabe Nation. The First Nations people of Canada share a whole lot of partnership and share a lot of cultural experiences with the peoples of Africa, and we always like to affirm that. So on this note, I would invite Cindy Temushodzin, the Associate Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs, to make her remarks. Please give her a warm round of applause.
The box was not put here for me. Your Excellency, Mr. Jakaya Mrisho Kikwete, former President of the United Republic of Tanzania, High Commissioner Dr. Ulisu Bisya, ambassadors, high commissioners, esteemed colleagues from Carleton University, guests, colleagues, and friends, welcome, bienvenue, karibu. As others have mentioned, I would like to acknowledge that we are meeting on the traditional and unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe people. I would like to start by welcoming His Excellency Jakaya Kikwete to Ottawa. We are honored to greet you and are most grateful that you have joined us to share your insights into Mwalimu Nyerere and his legacy. I would also like to congratulate the Tanzania High Commission and the Carleton Institute of African Studies for organizing this important event to celebrate and honor one of the great visionaries of Tanzania, Africa, and the world. This occasion reminds us indeed of the immense contribution of Mwalimu Nyerere, and particularly the contribution he made to the liberation of the people of Tanzania and to many other African countries. There is no doubt that Julius Nyerere was a freedom fighter, and his vision of an Africa that is free, secure, prosperous, and at peace remains an inspiration to the people in your country and in ours. His legacy has contributed directly to the Tanzania of today and indeed of the continent. And we cannot speak about Mwalimu without acknowledging his legacy as a diplomat. Everywhere he traveled around the world, Mwalimu advocated rightly for developing nations to be seen as equals and treated as allies, partners, and friends with respect, trust, and confidence. And because there have been some words in Swahili, let me say a few words in our other language, French. Cher ami, en 1981, l'ancien Premier ministre Trudeau, accompagné de son fils, qui est maintenant notre Premier ministre, a effectué une visite officielle en Tanzanie. C'est à partir de cette première visite que l'amitié entre les deux dirigeants est devenue le fondement d'une amitié sans cesse grandissante entre le Canada et la Tanzanie. Le Canada entretient des relations robustes avec la Tanzanie depuis l'indépendance de cette dernière en 1961. Nous partageons des valeurs communes de paix et de sécurité, de coopération respectueuse et de respect des droits de la personne et des libertés fondamentales. Et nous partageons une cause commune, voir toutes les personnes dans le monde jouir de la dignité et du respect, voir au sein de leur gouvernement et de la manière dont ils sont gouvernés. C'est l'essence de l'héritage de Julius Nyerere. One of Mwalimu's legacies was a desire to see a united Africa. President Kikwete has carried on this legacy in his governance of Tanzania and in his role as the chair of the African Union, the embodiment of African unity, which Mwalimu held so dear. Today, many of my colleagues participated in the beginning of the historic first Canada-African Union Commission high-level dialogue, co-hosted with the African Union chairperson, Faki, and I will be joining that dialogue tomorrow. Canada recognizes the important role the African Union plays in delivering on the aspirations of people across the continent. On our side of the Atlantic, Canada recognized the importance of the AU and the role it plays for shared future prosperity. And we are very excited about the benefits the African Continental Free Trade Area will bring to all of our citizens. Mwalimu's Arusha Declaration was a vision before its time, and many of its tenets hold true for us today, that our governments hold the responsibility to work diligently towards the elimination of poverty, towards the elimination of illiteracy, and towards the elimination of poor health, and that all our people have a right to fundamental freedoms and full respect for their human rights. As Nyerere's legacy is the main theme of our gathering, allow me to thank in advance all of those who will share the important teachings he offered to us, which we celebrate today. I look forward to very insightful discussions. Thank you. Merci. Asante sana.
Thank you very much for those remarks. That gave us insight into the very important figure that we're celebrating today. Just before we move to the main plank of this afternoon, I wanted to acknowledge that there's a certain cycle that we're experiencing, and we're talking about it when we met His Excellency when he arrived. His Excellency Kikwete was one of the first distinguished African leaders to participate at the then newly established Institute of African Studies in 2011, when the institute was just 2 years old. And because in the continent we think in terms of cycles, and we dance in every cycle, as it were. When people die, we dance. When people are given birth to, we dance. So these ceremonies of life underscore how we move and the seasons and how we align. I think it's something worth noting that His Excellency is visiting us after 10 years, a decade of his first participation as a keynote speaker then in the celebration of Mwalimu Nyerere. And because we're going to wish him a whole lot of long life, who knows, in another 10 years, we'll probably have him visiting us this time at Carleton University, so that we would have progressed from a virtual conversation to a physical one in the city at this very beautiful edifice owned by the institution. And then now he will get home and visit the Institute of African Studies at the new place at Bunting Towers. But it's not my responsibility to introduce him formally. We do have a very distinguished diplomat, the High Commissioner of the United Republic of Tanzania to Canada, His Excellency, Dr. Mboki Ulisubisia, who will be profiling Mwalimu Nyerere in a very nice way. I don't mean like the police kind of profiling, of course. He'll be giving us a profile of this eminent African and this eminent world leader. And then also would introduce our special guest keynote speaker for the evening. Please join me in welcoming our co-host for this evening, without whom this event wouldn't have been possible, Dr. Ulisubisia.
This is a severe temptation. Your Excellency, Dr. Jakaya Kikwete, the former President of the United Republic of Tanzania, Madam Cindy. Now the second name is like Ulisubisia, so please allow me to stop at Cindy. Associate Deputy Minister, Foreign Affairs, Professor Bettina Kuzmarov, who stood here in place of the President of Carleton University, Professor Brenda O'Neill, the Dean, for your kind words, members of the diplomatic corps here in attendance, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for gracing this occasion by accepting our invitation to come. Truly, I was meant to profile the larger-than-life figure of the man for whose life and practice this meeting is essential. But thinking about it, and the truth of the matter that His Excellency served in the government longer than myself, I'll briefly say a little of what I know, and he shall do the rest. Nyerere is very crucial to our socio-economic landscape because he led our country, Tanganyika, then, for the fight for independence. This was not a small job. The reason being, we are composed of more than 120 tribal groups, each with their own language, with their own dialect. So effort number one was to unite us together to help us appreciate the fact that we belong to the same landscape of the territory. And this he succeeded so well that when Zanzibar attained her independence in 1964, it was not difficult for them to accept joining hands with us to make one republic, which currently is referred to as Tanzania, because of coming together of both Tanganyika and Zanzibar in 1964. Mwalimu Nyerere served us as the president up to and including 1985, when he voluntarily stepped down, allowing the baton to be passed to somebody else, acknowledging the fact that he had done what he could and that others needed to come and join the forum. During his tenure as a president, he was confronted with so many challenges. I like to make reference to a few on the political landscape. The Cold War that pitted the East versus the West, the global oil shortages of the 70s, famine and drought that are taking root in the African environment, but now, even without or in the absence of the war in Ukraine, is affecting the whole world because of the climate change. One of the things that we never forget is that in the year 1978, our land was invaded by our northern neighbor, northwestern neighbor, in the person of President Idi Amin of Uganda. It was under his presidency that not only were we able to thrash those troops out of the country, but we joined hands with the people of Uganda to make sure that such an occurrence was never going to repeat, and provided them with means and ways to move him out of office. We called that war Kagera War, and it's etched in the annals of Tanzania's history. Despite all the challenges that I've alluded to and more that I could not find time for, Mwalimu Nyerere successfully brought together a strong foundation for a young country such as Tanzania as it was emerging. Now I'm passing by also to note the fact that various scholars have profiled Mwalimu Nyerere in various ways. But one of the things that we do not want to forget is what the head of Chancery tried to employ here, the Kiswahili language. It was not intentional. However, it was meant to alert us that the African continent has a language that can bring together all the people in the vocabulary of words that make up the Kiswahili language. How do I know this? It's because that was the catalyst that brought the people of Tanzania together. Kiswahili language is a foundation on which our nation was built, and communication was very easy during the independence struggle, but also after the independence. Because of that language, it was easy for Mwalimu to insist that people's nationality people's citizenship should not be determined in terms of race, religion, or the language or tribal group to which they belonged. And that the only condition that was a prerequisite for citizenship in the United Republic should have been patriotism, which stands to this very day. Mwalimu Nyerere cut across the political divide by embracing the role of women in governance. He himself appointed some to ministerial positions and even diplomatic posts. I want to believe that President Jakaya Kikwete, the retired, is going to allude more to that because of the portfolio that he held in the country. Ladies and gentlemen, we are blessed this afternoon with the presence of a dear brother, a friend, but also a visionary leader who served the office of the president in the Republic for 10 solid years, a whole decade, with great success that other presidents coming after him have found it very easy to run and therefore make lots of noise to the outside world because of the foundation that was firm. One of the things that is very accurate is the fact that he served in various capacities as a young man, while Nyerere was the president in the ruling party, but also in the government. When President Nyerere retired, he served as a deputy minister, as a minister in finance, foreign affairs, minerals, and energy. And because of that contribution, the good Lord was preparing him for big office, because when he had finished, he vied for the position and he was overwhelmingly elected by the citizenry to the office of the presidency. And we are so grateful that this gentleman has many memories that I am risking to say fresh of the man at 100 whose purpose calls us to meet this afternoon. It is a joy to all of us here, without much proportion, that Dr. Jakaya Mrisho Kikwete, the former president of the United Republic of Tanzania, will be making his keynote address in a short while. You're welcome, sir. In Kiswahili we say, karibu sana.
Become larger than life, huh? Madam Cindy, Associate Deputy Minister for Foreign Affairs of Canada, Professor Bettina, Professor Brenda, Dr. Otiono, because he corrected me. Yes, because you know we in Tanzania and Kenya have Otieno. So when I first saw the name, I thought it was Otieno. So he made it clear that it is Otiono. The Nigerian one is not the Otieno of Tanzania and Kenya. The Tanzanian High Commissioner, members of the diplomatic corps present, members of the Carleton University Academia, fellow invited guests, ladies and gentlemen. I thank the President and Chancellor of this university and Director of the Institute of African Studies for inviting me to speak at this auspicious event. This is the second time this esteemed Canadian university is inviting me to speak on the legacy of Mwalimu Julius Nyerere, the first president of our country and the founding father of our nation. The first time was on March 4th, 2011, but I couldn't attend in person thanks to modern technology, I was able to participate. I'm glad this time I'm here in person. Back then, I was president of my dear country in 2011, but now I'm retired and a senior citizen of the United Republic of Tanzania. Allow me also to express my sincere gratitude to this prestigious university for organizing this event and for your continued interest in the legacy of Mwalimu Julius Nyerere. I'm deeply touched by the decision to celebrate his centenary this way. It also speaks volumes to the excellent relations that so happily exist between the government and the people of our two countries, Canada and Tanzania. Our relations, which are over 6 decades old, have withstood the test of time and have been growing from strength to strength. I feel proud to have played a part in advancing these relations. As the High Commissioner said, for 17 years I was minister, first in the Ministry of Energy and Minerals, and it was during my time that we attracted a lot of mining investments from Canada. I've been to Toronto, Calgary, Vancouver. I've been attending the Prospectors and Developers Association meetings in Toronto. The only thing I disliked, they used to hold it in February. It was just too cold for me. It was too cold for me. Maybe they did that deliberately to force us to focus on the meeting. Of course, after that, I became Minister of Finance, and then a Minister of Foreign Affairs, and 10 years as President. But let me also say that what the Carleton University is doing today is no surprise to us because of the special relations this university has with the University of Dar es Salaam, of which I'm the Chancellor. A son of the Canadian soil and a distinguished academic of this university, Dr. Crawford Pratt, was the first principal of the University of Dar es Salaam in 1961. He was there until 1965. Our university started as part of the University of London, later became a constituent college of the East African University, later became an independent university as we are today. So we have that relationship to us when Carleton University is. But we have had so many of faculty from this university taking their sabbatical at the University of Dar es Salaam, and also ours taking their sabbatical here. We had an exchange program of students. So to me, it's just coming home. Ladies and gentlemen, I've been asked to speak about the legacy of Mwalimu Julius Nyerere. What a daunting task indeed. I'm not sure where to start and where to end, nor what is it that I should say and what is it that I should not say within the limited time that we have. Mwalimu has done a lot of things for our country, the East African and the Southern African region, the African continent, and the world. And he has left behind a huge legacy. As the ambassador was saying, I had the rare opportunity of working with the President Nyerere when I was only 25. I finished the university, I went to the military, came back. Then in the process of consolidating the union between Zanzibar and Tanganyika, the two parties, political parties, were merged to form a new political party, Chama cha Mapinduzi, and I was the second man from the mainland to be posted to Zanzibar. And through that position, I was also a minute recorder of all meetings of the Central Committee and the National Executive Committee of the party. So I was with him for many years. Growing up, I saw him how he was governing the country. He used to govern the country with his party. So somehow I know, that's why I'm saying there's so much that, but I've chosen a few things to mention here. But I believe the panel of very knowledgeable people may be able to talk about the other things which I will not have mentioned. Ladies and gentlemen, we in Tanzania celebrated his centenary in a very deserving manner. But to us, every year, on October the 14th, the day Mwalimu Nyerere died, we commemorate and celebrate his life and legacy. It's a national holiday, and it is celebrated with a lot of pomp and pageantry, deserving of a father of the nation. One of the important activities being done on that day is for the President of the United Republic of Tanzania to receive the independence torch, famously known as the Uhuru torch in Kiswahili language. This act symbolizes the end of the particular year's race of the torch through all districts in the country. The race of the torch is a legacy of Mwalimu Nyerere's commitment he made on October the 22nd in 1959 in his speech to the Tanganyika Legislative Assembly then, 2 years before independence. He said, and I quote, "We, the people of Tanganyika, would like to light a candle and put it on top of Mount Kilimanjaro, which would shine beyond our borders, giving hope where there was despair, love where there was hate, and dignity where there was before only humiliation." Indeed, on the day of independence of Tanganyika, on the 9th of December, 1961, the Uhuru torch was lit on top of Mount Kilimanjaro. And the new national flag was hoisted on top of the mountain. And these events were synchronized with the lowering of the Union Jack and the hoisting of the flag of the new nation at the National Stadium in Dar es Salaam. Mwalimu Nyerere lived up to the vision he espoused behind the words he said about lighting the candle. After the independence of Tanganyika, he spearheaded the fight against colonialism and apartheid in Africa. He was in the forefront of fighting for the world, for a just world economic and political order. At home, he prioritized the fight against what he termed the three enemies: ignorance, disease, and poverty. Mwalimu Nyerere's vision behind the Uhuru torch informed his mission, policies, and actions when he became leader of our country. He was a freedom fighter. He was a nation builder, a Pan-Africanist, an internationalist, and a humanist. Nyerere was born on the 13th of April 1922 in a small village of Butiama in Musoma district of Mara region on the eastern shores of Lake Victoria. 3 months after his birth, on July 20th, 1922, Tanganyika was formalized into a League of Nations mandate under British rule. So 3 months after birth, Mwalimu became a British subject. Being son of a chief, a Zanaki chief, he got the privilege of getting secondary school education at Tabora Boys, which was designated by the British for sons of chiefs. During British colonial rule, the British did not bother about to educate the general populace. They left that business to the Christian missionaries. And you know what? The interest of the Christian missionaries is not to educate the population. They're looking for converts. So they gave me a task which they were not up to doing it. No wonder at independence there were only 2 engineers and less than 3 doctors. Because there was no investment on the education of the people. There were only 3 tarmac roads. That is where we started. You know, I'm a member of the Education Commission with our chairman, Gordon Brown. From time to time, I tease him. I say, you know, he only left us with 2 engineers. The rest of the work, the heavy lifting on educating the people of our country was done under Julius Nyerere, from primary, secondary, and the university. In fact, the University of Dar es Salaam was established before independence. And TANU, the ruling party, had built its headquarters. But then Mwalimu said, no, let's use these headquarters as a nucleus to start the university. So that's how Professor Pratt came. It was, I think, 4 months before independence, and after independence, the government took over and built a new premise in the university here, where I studied, and then now I'm the chancellor of that university. After Tabora Boys, Mwalimu Nyerere went to Makerere University to train as a teacher. On his return, he started his teaching career at a school called St. Mary's at that time, which was renamed Kazima Secondary School. You know, because all schools were by the missionaries. So what Nyerere did was to take over all these schools owned by missionaries and made them national. At least you have a basis. Otherwise, you only have schools for only one denomination in the country. And that itself could have created a lot of things. And then, of course, that's how, after that, then the government started building new schools. At the beginning, that's how I did. So what was St. Mary's became Kazima Secondary School. And that is where he started teaching. 3 years later, he went to Edinburgh University, where he acquired his master's degree in history and political economy. It was at Edinburgh that he developed the strong ideas to fight for independence. You know, at that time there was this strong Pan-Africanist movement. William Padmore, Du Bois, and all these guys. Jomo Kenyatta, they were all in England. And that's the movement that had actually started. Fight for rights, but at the same time fight for independence, a fight against independence, fight against colonialism. He came back to Tanzania in 1952, and he became a teacher at St. Francis College, Pugu, school by the Catholics, church. Later, of course, after the nationalization, it became Pugu Secondary School. Mwalimu came back fired up. Wanted independence now. So at that time, you know, what British colonists did, they wanted people to form associations. The Africans formed the African Association. The Asians, the Indians, Indian Association. There was European Association. So there was Tanganyika African Association. But they were welfare organizations, only to fight for the rights and welfare of their communities. Mwalimu was active in this. They saw a young man, very bright, vibrant. They made him president of the association in 1953. He started working with his colleagues now. Let's transform this association into a political party. Instead of us fighting for welfare, let us just for our independence. Let's become independent. Let's govern this country ourselves. And all the issues that concern us, we will be begging nobody. It will be us now fighting for our own independence. They agreed. So on the 7th of July, 1954, the Tanganyika African Association was transformed from being a welfare organization into a political party. A party called the Tanganyika African National Union, TANU. Given his new preoccupation as the leader of the political party, Mwalimu was forced to divide his time between teaching and doing political work. To him, it was fine. He just organized his work, he would teach, and the Pugu was just close by. It was only 12 miles from Dar es Salaam. So he would teach, ride his bicycle, go to town, to his political base, and start agitating. But the colonial powers were not happy. So they prevailed upon the Catholic Church that owned the school to tell Mwalimu Nyerere to choose between teaching and doing politics. The school does not belong to them. It belongs to the Catholic Church. But because this guy is now engaging in politics, he was given the choice. Of course, the bishop acquiesced, they tried to persuade Mwalimu not to choose, but to choose to remain at the school and not to choose politics. Mwalimu chose politics. He says, if that is the case, I'm leaving teaching. I'm going to go. It was a tough decision for him to make, because only a year ago he got married to Maria, the wife. They had a child together, one of them. He had a job. Now he had made a choice of not having a job. And he had a young family too to take care of. But he said, we'll see what happens. So he chose to abandon teaching and get involved full-time in politics. This is one of those strong legacies of Mwalimu Nyerere. The spirit of sacrifice, the readiness to sacrifice in the interests of the larger Tanzanian population. That if it means me sacrificing teaching, this salary job, because of my involvement in the fight for independence of my people, I choose to join the fight for the independence of our country and our people. How many of us can sacrifice these days? I'm not sure. When confronted with such choices. After quitting teaching, Mwalimu Nyerere engaged in the struggle for independence of Tanganyika on a full-time basis. He crisscrossed the country, organizing the party, recruiting new members, and establishing new branches and offices. At the same time, he was busy mobilizing the masses of the people of Tanganyika to support the independence movement. Because opening branches of the party is one thing. You have to mobilize the people to support the movement for independence. He and his colleagues encountered several hurdles, mainly the machinations of the colonial power. They were arrested several times, with petty accusations in courts of laws, just to waste their time. But it did not discourage nor deter them. It was not an easy task, but with determination and perseverance, the party grew from strength to strength. They relentlessly continued to agitate and organize for the independence of Tanganyika. It did not take long. The party became a formidable political force, both in terms of the size of its membership, but also in terms of the breadth and depth of its organizational network. There was overwhelming support by the masses of the people of Tanganyika for independence. The colonial power saw this in black and white. They realized that there was no way of stopping Mwalimu Nyerere or really thwarting the growth of the independence movement. They were never short of tricks. There was the Legislative Council. The 1959 elections which was determining now the movement towards independence. A plot was hatched by the colonial authorities that in that election, everybody should cast 3 votes. 1 for an African, the second one for an Asian, and the third one for a European. So the mainstream members of TANU, the party, were so angry. They were saying it's just a ploy to deny TANU victory. So they are saying, let's boycott the elections. They held a watershed conference in Tabora in 1958. And this meeting is called Uamuzi wa Busara, the wise decision. At this conference, there was heated debate on are we going into the elections or boycotting the elections. Some members who were angry just branched off, formed another political party. But Mwalimu told them, look here, if we bought these elections, we are losing out. Because this is the last election before internal self-government. And if we don't participate, the front organizations of the British are going to win the elections and we are going to lose out. So he said, let's play by their book. 3 candidates. Let's have a TANU African. Let's have a TANU Asian. Let's have a TANU European candidate. And let's go to the elections. And this is precisely what happened. They had 3 candidates as the powers that be wanted: an African TANU, an Asian TANU man, and a European TANU. That's how we got people like Derek Noel Bryson, Cyanus Vesey, and all these Europeans, Dr. Lida Sterling. TANU went to the elections, they won all the seats. The TANU African won, the TANU Asian won, and the TANU European won. And there were no tricks. So in September 1960, Tanganyika gained internal self-government, and Mwalimu Julius Nyerere was made chief minister. On December 9th, 1961, we gained full independence. Mwalimu became the prime minister. In 1962, we became a republic, and Mwalimu Nyerere became president. I've been giving this narration to give some insights to a popular question that is being asked. How did Tanganyika, unlike other African countries, attain independence peacefully, without violence, and within such a short period of time? Because the party was from 1954, and in 1961 independence, just 8 years later. I think this is largely attributed to Mwalimu Nyerere's leadership skills. He He was a master strategist and organizer. He was big brain. We have never had a person like him. Throughout the struggle for independence, and thereafter, his methods remained true to his background as a humble, down-to-earth person, honest, a man of integrity, high integrity, man of the people, and a unifier. He was a master tactician. I've spoken about it during the independence struggle, but having seen him work, I can really testify he was a master tactician. In very difficult situations, you think, how do we get out of this? Let everybody talk. After that, he summarizes and gives guidance on the way, and his way is always the best way forward. That's how he was able to deal with the British conspiracy. He didn't work with him. Likewise, his charisma and eloquence. Mwalimu was able to forge unity of purpose by the people of Tanganyika. Many people to rally behind TANU in demanding for independence. Under his leadership, TANU's policies promoted the use of Kiswahili language. It certainly helped a lot, because some of the problems that a number of our neighboring countries in Africa are facing, there isn't a local language that unifies people. Fortunately for us in Tanzania, there is Kiswahili. Kiswahili belongs to nobody. It's a lingua franca that has evolved through the meeting of cultures. The Bantus, that us, with 60% of the words, 60 to 70% of the words. But the contact with Arabs, there is a sizable number of words that are Arabic. The Portuguese seafarers brought in their words. The Germans brought in their words. The British brought in their words. It is this that that really created a language of communication. A table, we don't have tables by name. A table is called mesa, and mesa is what language? It's Portuguese. We did not have schools. The Germans brought schools. That's what we call Schule. Schule is a German word for school. So, yeah. And the British brought to Zanzibar schools. In Kiswahili, they call it skuli. Yeah, so it is that language that has evolved through the meeting of cultures. And through the meeting of cultures, a language has evolved. And it has become a popular language. Everybody speaks it. I speak my own language. The ambassador speaks his own language. My assistant here speaks his own language. So all of us, when I go back home to my village, I speak my own language with my people. But the language that unifies all of us, if you speak, everybody understands you, is Kiswahili. And nobody owns it. Nobody can claim Swahili is my language. No. It belongs to nobody. It belongs to all of us. And he used it effectively to mobilize the people during the independence struggle and to unify the nation after the independence struggle. The party, of course, was quite particular about unity of our people. It opposed discrimination on the basis of race, on basis of religion, on basis of tribe, on basis of, and it's quite strict on that one. That's why I'm saying we have leaders who are Europeans, my origin. We have Arabs. We have Indians. When I was Deputy Minister for Energy and Minerals, my minister was Arnul Kasu, an Indian. No, that's it. Our Minister of Health at that time was Dr. Lida Sterling, a proper English gentleman. So, our Prime Minister, Deputy Prime Minister was Salim Ahmed Salim, of Arab origin. So that is the country we call the United Republic of Tanzania. And we're quite particular. And one of the things that you will find up to this day, a question that is never asked in any form that you feel. You are never asked your tribe. You are never asked your religion. So I have a team of people. I will know their tribe from the name. If it is Mpoki, I know this one must be from there. But it will not appear in any of his documentation, the official documentation. That's the way, so that people are not being denied opportunities or being taken advantage because of the religion, and some of the names are Mpoki, Mpoki Wiluswisi. He is Christian. Is that name Christian? No. Because if it was supposed to be Christian name, it would have been Peter, Joseph. So when you have Mpoki Wiluswisi, you will not know his religion, and he will not be asked. So these are some of the things. Of course, at the beginning, at independence, what he did, just abolished the system of chiefs. Of course, at the beginning, Nyerere was accused that he's trying to consolidate power around himself because he dismissed it, abolished all the systems. But it has helped to unify us. So these are some of those things that Julius Nyerere has done for our country. Julius Nyerere was a true Pan-Africanist. He subscribed to it by words and deeds. Of course, he joined the Pan-African movement when he was in Edinburgh. He met the giants there. But in his political party, he was categorical. The first creed of TANU says, all men are equal and Africa is one. I don't know if there are other political parties that are having that kind of creed. All men are equal and Africa is one. This is the creed from inception of TANU in 1954. It underlines his Pan-Africanist outlook. During the National Conference of TANU in 1967, Nyerere declared the following, and I quote, total African liberation and total African unity are basic objectives of our party and our government. We shall never be free and secure while some parts of our continent are still under colonial rule. 1967. It is him and his political party making this declaration. It's a commitment to Pan-Africanism. Mwalimu was a firm believer in African unity and freedom. For instance, during the struggle for independence of Tanganyika, he expressed his readiness to delay the independence of Tanganyika, to wait for the neighboring countries of Kenya and Uganda to become independent so that they could form the East African Federation. Mwalimu stated clearly that in that federation, he will not seek to be president of the federation, but the job he will ask for is to become the permanent representative of the East African Federation to the United Nations. Unfortunately, the federation never came to be, and it has remained an aspiration up to this day. But East African countries were, at that time, Kenya, Uganda, Tanganyika, and Zanzibar. Discussions with the President Karume of Zanzibar on April 26, 1964, the People's Republic of Zanzibar and the United Republic of Tanganyika and the Republic of Tanganyika merged to form a new nation called the United Republic of Tanzania. Mwalimu became his president, and the president of Zanzibar became the vice president. Mwalimu Nyerere's belief that the independence of Tanzania was not complete until all countries in Africa are independent moved him to commit to support efforts aimed at liberating African countries which were still under colonial rule and Africans who were being oppressed and humiliated under apartheid and racial discrimination. He was among the founding fathers of the Organization of African Unity in 1963. In his speech on the 23rd of May 1963 at the inauguration of the OAU, Mwalimu Nyerere said, "The real humiliating truth that Africa is not free, and therefore it is Africa which should take the necessary collective measures to free Africa." It is this kind of thinking which defined Mwalimu Nyerere's role in the liberation struggle in Africa. His country. He offered his country. His country was chosen to host the Africa Liberation Committee. And Mwalimu was elected its chairman. He welcomed liberation movements from the countries of South Africa, the African National Congress and the Pan-Africanist Congress, from Namibia, SWAPO, Southwest Africa People's Organization, from Angola, MPLA, Popular Movement for the Liberation of Angola, MPLA. From Zimbabwe, there were two political parties, ZAPU and ZANU, and from Mozambique, FRELIMO. To make Tanzania their home away from home. He allowed these liberation movements to operate from Tanzania, to organize and mobilize the masses of their people in their countries from Tanzania. He gave them military training bases. They all started at a place called Kongwa near Dodoma. And then each of these liberation movements was allocated a training base. ANC in Kilolo, PAC at Msata near my village. Others, Empela, Chunya, Frelimo, Nachingwea, all these, each of these. But it's only not only being given to him. He offered the Tanzanian People's Defense Forces to train them. He helped them get weapons, ammunition, arms and ammunition. He also mobilized international support for the liberation movements. And at that time, the most support we got from Russia and China. The others, the words we used to use in those days when we were young people, they were dancing with the enemy. Needless to say, this support was accompanied by a huge financial and political cost to Tanzania, which was itself still very poor. But this is the price that Mwalimu Nyerere told Tanzanians we should accept to pay to support our brethren, our brothers and sisters who were under colonial domination and apartheid. Surely it is not too much to say that the liberation movements and the people of Southern Africa were fortunate to have Mwalimu Nyerere president of Tanganyika and Tanzania at the time he was. Because if you had somebody else who was not interested, maybe they would still be fighting for their independence, fighting for freedom up to this day. Fortunate, there he was. He was just a believer. He just believed that the armed struggle will deliver. Well, the others did not believe it. He was just a dreamer. And his dream came true. Well, we now have independent Angola, independent Namibia, independent Zimbabwe, independent Mozambique, and apartheid-free South Africa. On the world stage, Mwalimu Nyerere was a great internationalist. He was renowned for his commitment to multilateralism and global justice. He was a staunch supporter and believer in the United Nations and his role as a guardian of world peace and promoter of harmony among nations. This was manifested early in the manner he managed to use the channels provided within the United Nations system to advocate for the attainment of Tanganyika's independence. Because first of course, we became a trusteeship territory under the League of Nations. In 1945, when came the United Nations, we became a trusteeship territory under the United Nations. And he was using those forums effectively. He's been to the United Nations I think, even twice or three times to appear before the trusteeship committee, to agitate that we are not a colony of the British, we are a trusteeship territory. The British have been entrusted to govern us or help us become independent. But now they want to stay. We ask for our independence, they are refusing. Because, you know, Rwanda, Burundi, and Tanganyika were being governed by the Germans as Dutch Ostafrika. After the Germans lost the First World War, Rwanda and Burundi became part of the Belgian colony. They were attached to Congo. Tanganyika became a trustee-shaped territory for the League of Nations first, and then the UN trusteeship territory. So we were different. We were not like Rwanda or Burundi after we left under the claws of the Germans. But it was hard. You had to convince when they organized the Nyerere had been to court several times. So Mwalimu tirelessly advocated and worked for a new world economic order so that countries of the South could also benefit equitably in the world economic and financial architecture. To this end, he served in the North-South Commission, which was chaired by Willy Brandt, was the Chancellor of the Federal Republic of Germany at that time. The Commission advocated for better cooperation and development between industrialized countries and developing countries in the South. Upon his retirement, Mwalimu Nyerere was appointed chairman of the South Commission, which aimed at reconceptualizing problems that countries of the South were facing from the South perspective, because our problems are being articulated by people from the North. So the South Commission was established. At least we articulate our problems as we see them, and ask for cooperation from the countries of the North. He chaired that, and after that he chaired the South Center, which was established to follow up on the recommendation of the Commission. Mwalimu Nyerere was deeply involved in the non-aligned movement, was part of the Group of 77. All of these were fora aimed at trying to get a globalization that was friendly, a world economic order that was also beneficial, I've spoken a lot, I think, as I was saying, these are the areas that I wanted to say. But now, post-Nyerere era, moving forward, it is 23 years now since Mwalimu Nyerere passed on. Our world has transformed significantly and at an accelerated pace. Although the challenges that confront us today may differ from those that Mwalimu Nyerere ardently worked to address during his time, they still remain one aspect. Africa and the developing world remain the hardest hit. New global crises like COVID-19, the Russia-Ukraine war, climate change, supply chain disruptions, inflation, debt crisis, food price hikes continue to affect these regions in unprecedented ways. Fortunately, Mwalimu Nyerere left Earth with a massive wealth of ideas which cannot be bankrupted. He showed us that the most sustainable way to address these kinds of global challenges is to work collectively together, supporting each other while upholding the dignity and wealth of fellow human beings. During the COVID-19 pandemic outbreak, for example, it was evident that no one was immune and no country could find solutions to the calamity alone. However, in the midst of the crisis, we still witness disparities and inequalities within African countries and other countries with lesser capacity to respond to the outbreak being left behind in the vaccine rollout initiative. It was easy to forget that no one was safe until everyone was safe. No one is safe until everyone is safe. But when it came to getting vaccines, it became so difficult for Africa. Currently, I'm chair of the Global Partnership for Education board. I also witnessed firsthand how education sector was impacted in an unequal proportion during the pandemic, and how it is still affected today in countries where there are conflicts. You know, at one point, when there was an outbreak of the pandemic, all schools were closed, of course, rightly so. We had 1.6 billion students were out of school at one point, globally. Of course, before that, we have 240 million who were not in school, children and young people who are not in school. But children in the countries of the north, schools were closed, but many of them were able to continue to study. There is the internet, the laptop, smartphone. In our part of the world, school closure meant complete closure. So these are some of those inequalities which we need to continue to work to see. Because I remember in the commission which chaired by Gordon Brown, which I was a member, one of the recommendations we said was that let all schools be connected to the internet. I think at that time when we were talking about it, 2016, people were thought maybe we are just crazy guys. But when the pandemic broke out, then everybody saw that we were thinking ahead of time. But how do we get there? And if education is the basis of development, how do we help countries in the South to be able to build this capacity? Of course, what we did with in the GPE, we spent about $500 million to assist 66 countries that wanted children to continue learning. Climate change and all these other problems are now affecting us all. In conclusion, allow me to say that, as I stated at the beginning, it is always challenging to speak about Mwalimu Nyerere, and particularly in a limited time. This is all that I was talking about, and you can imagine how much time I've spent. If we had to talk about so many other things, the local scene and all these other areas, even with the liberation movement, the details itself, it would have taken us a long time. There is a lot to say about this great man. It is not easy to choose what to say and what not to say. The challenge comes from the fact that Mwalimu Nyerere was and remains larger than life. He was and still is a man that meant so much to so many. What I've not been able to cover, the panelists will take care of that. Thank you.
So, Your Excellency, somebody whispered to me just before you took the podium that the passion, the eloquence with which you talk about Walimu, Nyerere, would always shine through. And having listened to you this afternoon, it seems to me that the Institute of African Studies will begin to think about how to make you a professor at large. That was quite professorial. So we're going to juggle a few things so we can finish on time, and then so that our food doesn't get cold. I can tell you that our co-hosts here have, as part of the agenda for this evening, African dinner reception and departures. So while it's still heating up, we're going to round up this second part. I know some of you have questions that you would like to ask. We're going to quickly move through this second session, which would invite some of the very distinguished diplomats who are here. And then having given this magisterial presentation, I just wonder what else is left for them to talk about this evening. But there is still a lot. So I'm going to say, with all due respect, that I'm going to invite you. And if you want to add one or two things to what has been said, knowing very well that the subject of our meeting today is almost inexhaustible in terms of the angles which we pursue. So without much ado, I would like to acknowledge that, Your Excellency, we do have a son of Tanzania on the faculty of the Institute of African Studies, and it's Chambi Chacha. He must be somewhere. It looks like he just stepped out. You know, I don't know which part of the country he comes from, but I'm not going to ask you to add to that now. So I just wanted to quickly observe that. So I'd like to quickly call to build a panel to run through just, adding up to what's maybe missing. Her Excellency, Ruth M. Chikwera, the Ambassador of Zimbabwe to Canada. Please do come to this. Okay, so she's going to come to the panel. And then I'd also like to invite His Excellency, Real Shaik, High Commissioner of the Republic of South Africa to Canada, to come to this panel as well. And then I would like to invite His Excellency Hector Igaza, the Ambassador of the Republic of Cuba to Canada, to also join us at the panel. Okay, so while we are thinking through the building of this panel, I think I'm going to move on. That seems to me to be a sign that His Excellency has spoken for all of us. Am I in order? And on that note, I'm going to invite our co-host for this evening, His Excellency Dr. Mpoki Olisibiswa, the High Commissioner of the United Republic of Tanzania to Canada. He is not going to make another representation, but he is just going to lead us, into the question and answer session. So we do have microphones there. There's a microphone on that corner. And if you want to ask a question or make a comment, very short one, please. You could line up and that's behind the microphone, ask your question or make your comment. You could direct it either to the High Commissioner or to His Excellency, the former President. Yes, please come over. So when you want to make any remark, kindly ask a question. I'll ask that we'll keep it to 30 seconds. Please mention your name and your affiliation if possible, and then go ahead and ask your question or make your short remark.
Thank you very much. We also appreciate the fact that our times are hard pressing, and that's why the MC has requested that our questions should be very straight and to the point. Please bear with us. We expect this session not to last more than 10 minutes. Sir.
Thank you. Oh, Andrew Romaine. I was at Carleton. I was a student. Question. You didn't mention much about China and Russia, but China built a railway, I think, from way back in 1972, I guess. And, well, how come wasn't more? I didn't see any pictures of anything Chinese in that series of photos. What else do I want to say? President Mugabe of Zimbabwe once said that we know what colonialism is, and what China is doing in Africa is not colonialism. Does Tanzania share that view, like the deceased president?
Right. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, you understand that the time that was at our disposal, like His Excellency said, would not have afforded us to say everything about Nyerere. As a matter of fact, not half has been said this far. If we were to talk on the Uhuru Railway project, the Tazara Railway from Dar es Salaam to Kapirimposhi in Zambia, that would have been a subject to consume the whole time that was at our disposal. So please bear with us. Yes. Aye. And so there was a problem in the government of Zambia in making sure that produce from the mines and the others would come to the port. Prior to their independence, everything used to go through South Africa. With independence, there were issues that South African government, with all the sanctions that were placed on them by the world, would have not have worked very efficiently. And as His Excellency has said, China was a ready ally to help us realize this dream through the champion effect of Mwalimu Nyerere, very close to the Chinese. It was agreed that they will help us to construct that railway line in the 70s. So that is what, again, remains as a legacy to the relationship between Africa and China. Now, naturally, we may differ in semantics, but our actions would speak louder than words. What China did to Africa then, what China is doing to Africa now, is open for everybody to see. I would not want to cheat anybody here that there's a position that as the Africa Union has taken for or against China. Each one of us can consume that to realize what role China is playing for Africa before, now, and in the future. Mr. Yo.
My name is Collins Ayo, and I teach economics at Carleton University. Asante sana, Mheshimiwa. Umetuelimisha vizuri sana. Asante sana. The question that I want to ask is this, that there is a cancer that is eating into the fabric of many African societies. And this cancer has crippled many countries, and this cancer is corruption. And so my question is that how can we apply the legacy and the lessons from the experience and the vision of Julius Nyerere to inoculate ourselves against this cancer so that our countries can move ahead for the benefit of our people. Independence is good, but independence needs to translate into food. Independence needs to translate into health. Independence needs to translate into better livelihoods for our people? Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's a very, very poignant question. Mwalimu Nyerere taught us one thing. It wasn't his personal interests in developing his family, his village, his region, and the area where he came from that mattered most. It was the whole country. And in this whole country, he epitomized the development of the people as a priority, and then other things would follow. During his tenure of leadership, his main intentions were to empower people with knowledge. As His Excellency said, those fundamental enemies that we had to face were what drove the government agenda. Poverty was one of them, and ignorance, and the poor health. He believed if those three fundamental challenges were tackled appropriately, then these people will strategize to bring development for themselves the best way they wanted to. Now, that was the foundation upon which future presidents built upon. That the second phase government did some infrastructure development, the third phase the same, the fourth phase, like His Excellency did, building on that foundation. Corruption is a disease that is born in us, desiring us above everybody else. The government alone does not have the means of containing this virus. The society has the solution to this problem. Africa has shown a very, very weird example to the world, because for similar resources placed at the disposal of the people of the continent as compared to many other places around the world, there is a lot of misuse following the path that you're talking about, leading to people suffering from hunger, from diseases, and the poor national development for the same amount of money. The solution to this is to begin at the root. It has to begin in our families. It has to be ingrained in our educational systems so that we are informed with abilities to question. You know, when we talk about value for money and the people are held to account, that begins a long journey to solving some of these problems. His Excellency may want to comment a little bit about this because he sat at the pinnacle looking down on what was happening. But I have just realized that punitive measures don't seem to be having the right effect to solving the corruption problem. I'm saying this because I know a country like China, where upon being convicted as a corrupt individual, there's only one punishment. It's capital. Have they stopped from being corrupt? The answer is obvious to all of us here. We need to reform ourselves. And this has to begin in our families and then into a larger society. When people are congratulated for stealing public goods, we are simply teaching the little ones that this is the way to go. But if we start questioning lifestyles that are not in keeping with what we know to be rightful incomes, I want to believe that this would contribute in a long run to solving this problem of corruption. I know it's not going to be a solution that's going to be attained in 1 month, 1 year, 2 years, but at least our societies will have learned that what is public good is for each one of us. And when we have a nation that is developed, each one of us will benefit from those developments. Your Excellency, you have a comment on that? Oh, thank you very much. Thank you.
Now, this is the other role of the MC that I don't like playing. have about 3 people who would like to ask questions, but unfortunately, and I really do regret it, we will not be able to take them. I'm sorry. Having said that, the conversation is going to spill over, and I think this is going to be the more exciting part of it. There are a lot of ideas, ideology, positions, interests that we can all advance. And we'll continue that conversation at dinner. I'm sorry. On that note, we'll have very quickly the photo sessions because we want to historicize today. And we'll have group photographs. I think I'm going to invite our colleague, Charles, to help me direct the photography. But while this is going on, we would like to express our appreciation. Once again, we have the dinner at the Woodside Hall, which is just adjoining the hallway as you get in here. There's a spillover room, you know, as much as possible. We want to make sure that you're comfortable. And I think I'm hungry. I don't know about you. And it's not every day in Canada that you get African food to eat, especially sponsored by a high commission. So you're not even paying for it if you're going to the special. And then as a makeup, I'm going to have the 3 gentlemen who are going to ask questions to have an alternative opportunity to speak with the High Commissioner, just if they wanted to touch base on the questions that they had. That will be a deal. Okay. So while the photographs are going on, let me remind us yet again. We have the bathroom for women on the right through the small stairway, and then we have the bathroom for men on the left-hand side, right there. So I'm not so sure that there are any special arrangements or protocols for the dinner, is there? I'm going to yield to my colleague, Charles, with whom we've been running this whole arrangement together. Charles, do you want to make any arrangement to that? I think that a photo session will start right now while we just finish this. And I would invite, we're supposed to show a 5-minute film, but that has been suspended, but you can loop it in the background while we are closing.
Thank you, Nduka. We'll have like 4 groups. The first group will ask His Excellency, former President Jakaya Kikwete, a representative from Global Affairs, and the President of Carleton and the Dean of the Dean of African Affairs Institute to come forward. Then High Commissioner also ask you to join. And the next the next group, I would ask the ambassadors and high commissioners from African group, please come forward behind them and join in the group, in the photo.
It's okay, don't worry.
Ambassadors and high commissioners from Africa. Diplomatic Corps. The Diplomatic Corps. After the diplomatical, I'll ask the organizers, the staff from the High Commission of Tanzania, Masnduka, you may join us for the last photo. Staff from the High Commission and organizers from the Faculty of Institute of African Affairs.
So that will be Institute of African Studies staff and faculty to join, please.
I've seen colleagues from Global Affairs. You have not taken a photo with us. Please. Vincent and the group.
All right, I think that will be all for the photographs for now. We still have opportunity at the dinner, if possible, to take more photographs. On that note, I would like to thank everyone who has made time this afternoon to be part of this event. It's not always easy on an afternoon that you'll be in offices or doing other things. So I'd like to thank the staff of the Republic of Tanzania High Commission for collaborating with us to host this event. But most importantly, I'd like to thank His Excellency for making this trip and being here and also offering such a remarkable keynote. Thank you, Your Excellency. I would also like to thank the High Commissioner of the Republic of Tanzania and all members of the diplomatic corps who has been here this evening. I want to thank our colleagues from Carleton, the leadership of Carleton University, for always standing by the Institute of African Studies. Thank you for being here this evening. And then for the wonderful audience who have been engaged, to the extent that we just couldn't accommodate all the questions that you had to ask. That showed the interest, the keen interest that you demonstrated. I want to thank you. All those who have also played part on the part of the venue, the technologists who have made this event possible, the management of this very beautiful edifice. I want to thank you all for being part of this evening's celebration. And we look forward to having you join us some other time. And if you want to be part of the mailing list of the Institute of African Studies, we'll have at the dinner location, we'll have a piece of paper where you can write your name and your email, and we include you on our mailing list, which gives you information every Friday about the events that we have, opportunities that we have, and other activities of the Institute. On that note, I think we've come to the formal end of the event, and all that is left now is a dinner. And as I said, it's right across this room on the hallway at the Woodside Hall, and there's also a spillover. So without much ado, we have bringing this event to a close today. Thank you, everyone, for being part of this very remarkable afternoon.
development to us cannot be the building of a road so that we can point to a road and say, there you are. You know, at one time we had no road, now we have a road. That is development. It can't be the building of a building like this one and say, look, at one time we had no big buildings in Tanzania, now we have big hotels. This is not what we call development. Development to us must be the development of our people. And we are saying it can be brought about by themselves for the purpose of improving their own lives. Now, it does happen that our people are rural people. If development means developing our people by themselves so that they can improve their own lives, well, their lives as peasants. And this is where you are going to develop them, because they are going to work as peasants, to improve their surroundings as peasants, and create, if you like, a new kind of peasant. And this has implications, the political implications of this, that we are going to be creating not merely these social units. These are not simply going to be social units. These are going to be also self-governing units, to the extent to which they will control those affairs which affect their own lives as producers.
Should Tanzania develop a viable middle class? And if it did, what role would that middle class play in the socialist revolution?
I would say a middle class cannot help to develop the ideas of the Arusha Declaration. How could it help? Because we are saying specifically in the Arusha Declaration that we are not going to build classes. We are against the idea of building classes. So a middle class, what is the idea of a middle class? A middle class between what classes? What class are we going to have on top, and what class are we going to have at the bottom, where we are going to have this middle class in between? We don't accept this idea. The ideas of the Arusha Declaration are ideas of developing a dedicated leadership to what we call our revolution.
Happiness becomes a matter of philosophy. I'm not quite sure that the millionaire is necessarily happier than the poor man. I don't know. This is a philosophical matter. But health is something that everybody desires. So people should be healthy. Whether that will make them happy, I don't know. But people should be healthy. Everybody wants a healthy body and a healthy mind, I suppose. Food, we need food. Whether food makes people happy, I don't know, but hunger does not make them happy. People have to have sufficient food to eat. Education, whether educated people are happier, whether I'm happier now because I'm educated than I would have been if I was an ignoramus, I didn't know anything. If I remained superstitious, I'd never heard about the word science. It's just possible. I might have been happier. It's not a question of being happy, but we can't have a community, an ignorant community, and keep education from the masses of the people.